24. Good evening, everyone. It's 10 minutes after 4, July the 21st. Time to begin our 4 o'clock meeting. This time I'd like to call a roll to make sure we do have a quorum. Councilman Anthony.
Here.
Councilman Gordon. Here. Councilman Holloway. Councilman Holloway. Councilman James.
Here.
Councilman Kazire. Here. Kilgore. Councilman Gee.
Here.
Right. We do have a quorum. Everyone's present. Thank you for coming. This time we go to item 1 on the 4 o'clock agenda, Obama Foundation, my brother's keeper.
Mayor, members of City Council, I'd like to just introduce the topics. For your strategic session, there are 4 topics. The one the mayor just mentioned, number 2, legislative prayer that was tabled from May 5th, and a recommendation for a critical intersection analysis of Sutherland Avenue and Walkup Avenue intersection. And the 4th is a resolution amending water and sewer extension policy. And if time's not sufficient to discuss each of these items during the next, up until about 5:30 or so, at your discretion, they can be shifted to this evening's regular meeting agenda or carried over to the next month's strategic. At approximately 5:30, I'd suggest recessing the strategic session to allow folks a brief break between this session and the regular meeting at 6. So in terms of the first topic, Mayor and members of council, in May, Mayor Kilgore signed proclamations and a pledge in an effort to give attention to some of the concerns and issues that have been gaining national attention in the aftermath of the tragedy involving George Floyd's death. Mayor Kilgore marked Wednesday, June 3rd as a day of prayer and reflection in light of the murder of George Floyd and denounced the criminal actions of the Minneapolis police officers that were involved. Another action that Mayor Kilgore took was involved observing National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Additionally, our mayor signed onto My Brother's Keeper Alliance Obama Foundation that pledges a review of police policies, reporting to the community about our policies, and instituting changes that the review finds are needed. This afternoon, our police chief and human resource director will offer presentations on the police department's progress with fulfilling the Obama Foundation's My Brother's Keepers Alliance pledge and the response to goals set forth in the 8 Can't Wait campaign. The material described the department's review and refinement of their policies, ongoing community engagement activities and feedback, and the relevancy of accreditation through CALEA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, which is an entity that offers external oversight and evaluation of law enforcement organization policies and practices. Following Chief Gilliard will be Deborah Reed, Human Resource Director, and she'll offer material summarizing city's programs concerning diversity and inclusion. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chief Gilliard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Paisley. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today and kind of bring you up to speed on our progress and what we've done since we've signed the pledge, and just kind of let you know where the police department is and where we're going. As you know, we've had our accreditation on site back in March. We had very favorable responses, so that allowed us to have our policies reviewed and looked at. We went one step further. This was a team effort. I want to thank the city manager, the assistant city manager, Brian Bourne, our city attorney, Rajiv Chakan, Ms. Reed, our human resource director, and our finance director. And once we started looking at our policies, we had to seek guidance from those folks on my level to make sure that we had everything the way we needed it. Internally, I have 2 staff members with me today, Sergeant Monique Holt and Sergeant John Jackson. Sergeant Holt's very involved with our community. Sergeant Jackson is involved with our accreditation process. I'll kind of give you a little heads up before we get started on our accreditation process. Next Friday morning, we have our hearing to be awarded our accredited status for the 4th time. Your police department's way ahead of a lot of agencies in the nation, and the challenges they face, we don't necessarily face that because we've been doing a lot of this stuff already. And that is a tremendous benefit of accreditation. If you look at this response to I Can't Wait, and you can tell we just did that chart. Sergeant Jackson prepared that with the assistance from Angie Rangola in my office. If you look at the de-escalation required that, we actually started that in 2005. And when we were tasked with the mayor's pledge to go back and look at, that's one of the things that we said, hey, we can do a little bit better. And so this year, every officer in our department is going to go through de-escalation training. And also, we're going to go through subject control and arrest techniques to make sure our officers are up to date. Hey, this is the most proper way that you do have to arrest someone and the techniques that we use. Banning chokeholds, and if you see that, we've not done, that's been in our place since 2008, which goes back to our first accreditation. So for 12 years, we haven't allowed stuff like that to happen in our department. The next one, duty to intervene, that was something that we wrote into policy this year, just as an added bonus. It's a common sense approach. If you see someone that's getting frustrated with the situation or call that they're on, you need to intervene to make sure you're safe and that other officer's safe. We put that into our policy this year. You can see ban shooting at moving vehicles. The use of force continuum requires exhaust of all other alternatives before shooting and deadly force, require warnings before shooting, and require comprehensive reportings. All those were implemented in April of 2008, which is 12 years ago. So we've been doing that, but that goes hand in hand with our accreditation process because of the policies and procedures we had through CALIA. The next slide, if we go through, it talks about President Obama's pledge and kind of what we did when we were internally looking at the challenges that I had received from the mayor and the city manager to address these policies and to look and see where we're at, but to explain them to our officers, but also be able to explain them to you and to the public. Review use of force policies. Fortunately for us, we just went through all of our policies and CALIA said, hey, you're good. Not only are you good, you did a really good job reviewing your policies and making sure that you understand what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to be and the things that we're supposed to do on a daily basis. It's become the normal. This is the way we train. This is the way we're going to operate. And this is how we're going to treat people. Our use of force policies, we review that twice a year. Once when we qualify with our firearms for firearms training and go over all the different scenarios and the policies pertaining to use of deadly force. But also when that officer sits down with a supervisor every year for evaluations, we go back over that policy again. So twice a year, we're reviewing our highest liability policies, but also once a year, we're going to do our regular firearms training. The second one is to engage your community, including a diverse range of projects. And that was something, to be honest with you, as a chief, I know my officers are doing a tremendous job in the community, but in your packets, and you see the information and stuff they did. And I went through and I was reading over this last night. I said, I just need to highlight a few so I can talk to you about them. There's 2 pages. I'm not going to take up all the time because Ms. Reed's got a lot of important stuff that we need to talk about with her. And the partnership that I found that we had with so many different departments in the city was just amazing. Partnership with Ms. Reed's office through diversity training, through our diversity committees and our partnerships, to Parks and Rec with Ms. Edwards, with her office. It was really amazing to see what these officers do on a daily basis. Our partnership with the school system, our school resource officers. Our school resource officers are out today on Maurice Street delivering house cleaning supplies. What other department that you can tell me that's been doing that? And I'm so proud of those guys and girls for what they do every day and to take that time to be that involved in their community. Reading buddies, I highlighted that one. These guys go in these elementary schools and read to these children. And they didn't stop when the school stopped. They kept checking on these kids. The police advocating for student success at Monroe Middle School, taking time out of their schedules when they're off duty to come up and play basketball or just spend time with children. If they can make an impact on a kid's life, that hopefully we won't have to deal with certain issues later on in their life. Playing basketball with them, the youth camp that some of y'all attended, council members attended when we were doing the Bridge Builder, we had a lot of fun with that. And we let the officers and the children interact with each other and just get to see, hey, we're human, we're parents too. Some of us are grandparents, and you need to understand, hey, we're not here to cause you problems, we're here to help you. The Parks and Recreation Department and our partnership with them is phenomenal. If it wasn't for their staff, we would not be able to do some of the things that they do in these communities because they allow us to use their facilities and their staff for some of these programs. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for what Parks and Rec does for us every day. And I really appreciate their support. Coaching, our police athletic league, Mr. Zai, you've been involved with that. And we know the importance of that, the 3 sports we have each year where these kids come in. One of the things I've really been proud about is our officers' children have played with some of these kids that doesn't have it as good as our officers' families do and you couldn't tell the difference because you out there playing sports, they really watched after each other. And so the Police Athletic League has been a tremendous support for this department. It's been a tremendous avenue for us to reach the community in ways that we would not be able to do it. And these officers are really taking a keen interest in going out and coaching these different sports. The community events and cookouts, as you know, through Monroe Night Out, is a key to our success, to being able to involve with our neighbors so they can come get to know us on a different level. It's been a privilege to be on some of these cookouts and get to know our neighbors in a different light. And I think it's built a lot of good relationships within the town and with the police department and our community. One of the things we have through our career development plan is that officers have to have community projects. So on top of all this stuff we just talked about, each officer has to come up with their own community project to where they could coach in power, they could do a lot of different things. One of the things that was highlighted when I was reviewing over this was the fact that we actually had an officer that helped with Special Olympics and refereeing and was nationally recognized for his efforts. That's just one example. There's so much stuff that folks do, whether it's helping senior citizens with their medicine or whether it's helping senior citizens with meals on every Friday. There's just so much that these officers are invested into the community. And I think that investment into the community pays off because you don't have the problems and the complaints. Y'all's phone's not blowing up, hey, Brian was ugly. You know, we address issues when things happen, we'll talk. And we'll try to be upfront and say, hey, look, my door's always open, come talk to me. And I think that's one of the things that's been really successful with our community. The support that we received from y'all has been tremendous, with us allowing us to have body cameras, letting us have the ability to educate our officers and send them to the best training. If you look at the things that we've been able to do, there's a direct relation to the support that we received from city management all the way down to the rookie officer who's just starting and trying to start a career. So by being involved in going through a career development program where you can move up in rank and increase your pay and your livelihood, but also give back to the community, where we all win because we're making Monroe just a better place for us to live and work. I think that's something that's really, really that I've seen over the last, especially the last 4 or 5 months, because these officers had to stop. It's tough right now to be a police officer. It really is, because you don't know. But in Monroe, it's a little bit different because our community really does care about us. And if you see what these officers are doing every week, every day, if you look at Facebook, they just went to the Ice Release Street and we're working with the church and handing out stuff to these kids. And so by doing that, it eliminates so many problems and challenges that other folks are having that we don't. And I think that open line of communication, whether it be speeding or whether it be any type of complaint we have in our community, a quality of life issue, we work really hard to address that. The third thing in the pledge was to report your findings. That's one of the areas we can improve. I think that falls directly back on me to make sure I get that done for you. Say, hey, this is what we're doing, and getting that information out there. P.O. Bank and his staff have been very helpful and generous to us to get stuff on Facebook and get stuff on the internet. So it's allowed us the opportunity to put some of that information out there. We can do better, and I know that we will. We're coming up with reporting. After we have our hearing next Friday, we'll start the process of making sure we get all our information out there in the fashion that we can. The surveying of the community. We've been doing that about once every 3 years, once every 2 years for our CALEA. That was a requirement of CALEA to do a survey. We've actually looked at changing the survey. Maybe we can do it every year with the way the different avenues that we have on the internet. Let's do it once a year and see, hey, where do we need to improve? So if there's any issues that we're not addressing the way we should be, let's address it. Let's find out. So that's some of the things that's easy to fix. We can change it. But looking through the pledge that the mayor tasked us with, looking at the policies and saying, hey, look, what can you do better? That's one of the fourth one, reform the community police use of force policies. We're very, very fortunate that we're accredited because it requires us to do that and keep up with documented use of force policies. A few years ago, you allowed us to purchase body cameras. That's been one of the most safest, best use of taxpayer money, is to allow each officer to have a body camera and say, hey, this is exactly what's going on, because our complaints have gone way down, use of force reports have gone down. And so that's something that we look at every year. And so every year we do an analysis of the use of force reports. So that's something that we try to use that to build the confidence in the community. Hey, look, if something happens, It will be an investigation done to it, and it's going to be documented. The next thing at 4B in that category is develop a message that can be placed prominently on our homepage. Again, using social media to promote the organization is a challenge that we face inside. And we're working to fix that because we realize in this day and age of technology, we need to make sure that we have the ability to put stuff on the internet to make sure that our citizens are informed about what we're doing. It doesn't have to be all bad. We need to put a lot of good stuff that we're doing because honestly, when I went through that sheet, I was really proud. I was very proud of the work that we had done. When we were challenged with this, it really made us look inside and say, hey, we're doing a lot of stuff good. And I'm proud of the officers. I'm proud of what they're doing. And they do this every day. But I need to do a better job of thanking them. I really appreciate what they do on a daily basis. Next Friday is our CALEA hearing. I invite all of you to come. We'll get it worked out, whether it's police department, so we can social distance, but we'll be going before actually hearing what they have to say about the police department. I'd appreciate if you'd be there. I think it'd be a great opportunity for us to say, hey, this is the Monroe Police Department. And we're doing things good here, and we got the support of each other. And I would appreciate it. I'm proud of what they did and the comments they made. James, you were there. You heard the exit interview. It was really impressive of what they come and said and took examples of stuff that we are doing here in Monroe, and they were taking it back to other agencies. So if we can continue to set that example and let folks look at us, say, hey, this is what's going on right. This is what we're doing that's right. And let's use us as an example. And it's a whole lot easier to come in and say, hey, well, my council, my manager supported me to get body cameras. In turn, body cameras have helped us. But they allow us to have a career development program to where I work with Ms. Reed, and Ms. Reed said, okay, these are the steps that we need to go through. And allowing that helps the employees, and you merge those together, and you have a very, very, very successful group. It's only as good as the people that work within the department. That's not about me. It's about these men and women that go out every night and risk their lives to make our lives a lot better. And I'm forever grateful, humbled by it, to see the work that they do and the job they do with our community. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed and kind of where we're going and some of the areas that we're doing good and some of the areas need to improve. Mayor, I want to tell you one thing. When we went through this and Sergeant Jackson put this together for me and we were going over this, he said, Chief, we were doing 90% of the stuff the mayor asked us to check. And that really made me feel good knowing we've been doing it for 12 years. We always can get better. Always. I completely understand that. And we got a couple of things we're going to get better on, but 90% of the stuff that was requested out here, we already do. And so I'm very happy with that. And I'll be happy to take any questions you got for me.
When and what time is it going to be a hearing?
I will let you know that it's going to be next Friday morning. They've given
time slots are like 10 to whatever, but they're doing 13 agencies virtually. So I don't want to give you a concrete answer on time.
Okay.
I know it's around time of 10. That could be pushed to 10:30 just as easy as it could be 9:30. But when I get a definite, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Brian,
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to compliment you on the job you guys are doing. You too.
Yes, sir.
You're definitely visible. You're professionals, and you got one tough job. And I know as councilman, I support you wholeheartedly.
Thank you, sir.
Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor, I just want to appreciate you for taking the suggestion from my email to look into my brother's keeper. And just for the record, I stand behind my Monroe Police Department 100%, but I thought that this would be a good opportunity, just as Chief said, to really look inside our department and see how we were doing. I think this was a good guideline, and I am very proud of our police officers that we are in compliance with 90% of everything that's on this this survey or this pledge. But you know, there's always ways to improve. But I am really appreciative, and I'm really proud of you guys for the work that you do. So keep up the good work, and you know, let's just keep getting better.
Yeah, well, thank you. You know, public safety is a big interest of mine. You do a good job. Glad to work with you. And you do have an open door policy.
One person I like to commend too is John Rogers with youth.
Yes.
I work with him in that pile, and there ain't nobody any better with kids than John Rogers.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate you. Thank you. I know I was amazed. Well, really wasn't amazed when I saw the list because I know you do a lot of this stuff in the community. I see your officers out there because I attend most of these events that I see. So I greatly appreciate everything.
And I appreciate that because you get to see from a team level where all of us in this room, with Ms. Reed or Pete, we all work together, and it takes all of us to make these projects and these goals work. And I'm grateful for my partners on my level, the other department heads, because it is teamwork inside the city of Monroe. I appreciate that.
Great job.
Good job, Chief. Thank you.
I do have one question for the chief though, with regards to some of the training. Chief, what does your anti-bias training look like for your police department? What exactly does that entail?
You say you're anti-something,
Anti-bias training.
anti-bias training.
And the anti-bias, there's several different ways that we can handle that, Mr. McGee. One, with our racial profiling, if there's any issues with that, there's actually documented training that we do every year for what the training that's put out through the state of North Carolina. So that's mandatory every year that we have some type of juvenile minority sensitivity training, and that covers the bias training and any other issues. So that's done every year, and any additional training that we would need, we would also provide that.
Okay. And do you guys do a lot of training in like non-violent conflict resolution, mental health, homelessness, and things of that nature?
Yes, sir. Every officer within the department has to attend the 40-hour week of crisis intervention training, and they deal with a lot of different mental health issues through that training. I think now I have about 10 or 15 officers that need to go through that class just because I have so many new officers. But that is a requirement that every officer does additional training. And that training can be based upon the program that's put out at South Piedmont Community College, another one of our partners. And it allows the officers to have access to different types of mental challenges that we will face coming from us with the stressors of our job, but also dealing with our citizens who may have different type of medical issues that we would need to be aware of. It's not necessarily arrestable, but just that the way they're acting or behaving, this kind of teaches us, hey, this is what you need to look for. And one other thing that we brought up and did in that training and went a step further, we have a crisis intervention team that deals with our veterans who've come home from different wars and have fought for our country, and we work with them. Sometimes it's easy when another veteran can talk to a veteran about what's going on and trying to de-escalate a situation before it got worse. So there's a lot of different training that we make our officers go through, but they volunteer for a lot of it as well.
Okay, cool. One more question. How are we with regards to diversity within our leadership positions with our police department? I understand we have a few people that have been there for 15 plus years and some maybe even 30 plus years, but don't necessarily have ranking positions. How does that work in that department with regards to high ranking officers?
I heard the first question right, Mr. McGee, was about the diversity in the rank as far as supervisors. I just had 2 minority officers retired within 3 days. We're going through a promotion process now.
Okay.
We'll have another promotion process in August. The candidates have to compete against each other, and there's a competitive process that they go through. And once they're scored, then we promote from that list. So everybody goes through the process on that. That's the first part. I couldn't hear the second part.
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, I understand that we have a few officers that have 15 plus and 30 plus years of experience. And I was just trying to see if there's any opportunities for us to, to improve in that department with regards to diversity and those ranking positions. How many minorities do we have right now in those positions? I know you did say a couple of just retired, but what's the current status of the of minority or Black and brown officers that are in high ranking positions?
You're just talking about minorities or white females, or minorities just African American males, or
yeah, black and brown officers specifically.
Lieutenant Kilgo just retired. He's African American male. Sergeant Holt right now is the current officer we have. That's a minority officer, but I don't think of Sergeant Holt that way. I see her as a good police officer and the job she does. So currently, that's the status that I have with African American female.
Okay. Sir.
Any other questions?
just a suggestion, to highlight some of this, so like on Facebook, because if you don't go to the community centers, you don't know they do this stuff. You have to be actively involved and know that this stuff happens. So if this could be like posted, because people will be amazed about the stuff that you do in the community with some of this stuff. Just listen.
Take care of that.
And you know, it might be a good idea too, to, I don't guess they're having the community meetings now, some of them are because of COVID-19 and social distancing, but if they are, if you know, send someone to them and let them know, a lot of people still are not on social media.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Good job. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I believe Chief will be followed by Deborah Reed, who will offer an overview of programs and activities in the area of diversity and inclusion. Deborah?
Wow. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I'm Deborah Chestnut Reed, Director of Human Resources, and I thank you for allowing me to come before you.
Ms. Reed, if you will, please, I've gone down to everyone. When we speak, let's speak up a little bit.
Okay.
They have, we do some technical different, and we're
Okay.
doing this over the, through the laptops.
Uh-huh.
We're having a problem getting our voices out, so let's all speak up. I just got a note on that a minute ago.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. The city organization has demonstrated a good faith effort to provide a workplace that is fair and equitable to our employees. In addition to that, we train employees to also be fair and equitable to our citizens. We are all aware that there is a national issue and concerns of unfair treatment. Many of us have not ever experienced such a storm as we're experiencing now with the pandemic. We have economic uncertainty, extreme high unemployment, closure of businesses, racial unrest, and national confusion. As an organization, we have to be sensitive to the fact that there are specific problems in certain communities versus other communities. Now that the national spotlight is shining on every organization, it is important for us to discuss and share existing diversity programs. Many people are taking off the cobwebs. We actually have programs that have been active for a number of years, and service programs that all of our departments are involved in, which help us as an organization to become better and also be able to develop community relations. And looking at the first slide there, this is just the city's diversity initiatives, the programs and services. An agenda that I'm going to try to cover will be Diversity Advisory Committee, Diversity Roundtable, the Citizens Academy, Employee Diversity Training, internship programs, a vision of developing a training for placement of disadvantaged, and equal employment opportunity and any discriminatory claims that might have existed, and the City of Monroe's annual employment demographics. Our Diversity Advisory Committee has been around since 2000. It is to support the Human Resources Department City Manager in proactive effort to organizational transformation to achieve community representation. The strategy is to make sure that we're interactive, educational communications for both the organization and our citizens. The program scope, it hinders around the diversity roundtable, the Citizens Academy, and diversity training. The objective is to make sure that the city mirrors our community. The representation is of various employees within the various departments so that we have a diversity committee. Our roundtable that happens once a year, it started back in 2005 to embrace and celebrate diversity and to provide opportunities for a diverse group of individuals to come together, to be involved in city organization and the community. We actually have a luncheon every September. It's by invitation for community leaders to get involved and to understand if we have any current issues. We have leaders that are there, clergy, the Citizen Academy graduates normally will show up, and then we also have other citizens. We have our city manager there. We have the committee itself, and we normally will have visiting with us the fire chief, the police chief, And normally, our citizens could ask any kind of question. It could be a topic that is happening yesterday, but they can ask any question and get involved in what's going on. Our Citizens Academy started in 2009. Our first graduating class was in 2009, and that was September 2009. It's an 8-week program that provides information to better understand and gain insight into various city departments, their roles, and the method of service delivery. Participants include citizens and our city employees. Graduates have been appointed to various city committees and also have served on and continue to serve on city council. So, and we're proud of them. The Academy fosters other city diversity initiatives, and it builds relationships across the community. Employee diversity awareness and training. Training is very important. We started this back in 2008. It is mandatory for every employee to go through training. It's done on a biannual basis. The program's objective is to inform and educate employees on diversity, inclusion, biases, improving their sensitivity to one another and to our citizens. It increases awareness and understanding of diversity in the workplace. It develops skills that will enhance productivity, communication, and community service among the city employees. We need to be mindful that training alone does not resolve diversity-related issues or challenges that exist. However, training does play a vital part in the success of our initiatives, and it also in terms of failure of our overall diversity initiatives. So it's important that our employees understand what's going on around them and understand our citizens. Internship programs, which are very important to our future. It's fostering developing career-related work during students' college years. Interns are currently placed with the city now based on the university's guidelines, which determines whether or not it's paid or is a credited hour. Students placed now that it's on a small scale because you kind of need funding to keep those programs going. So there's some restraints there, but right now we have been involved with Wingate, North Carolina A&T, UNC Charlotte, and a few other colleges that are outside in the North Carolina area. Additional funding fosters retaining a large number of future employees and residents. There are also other programs that we could participate in to actually continue to increase our diversity, which would be cooperative education. That's a 3 to 6 month period where it's an alternating year, and that student would be full-time. Internships, which are part-time, they normally start just when school's out. They might work 20 to 28 hours as a part-time employee. As an employer, the benefit allows us to train potential career employees and make unique contributions to our educational institutions. Developmental training placement, disadvantaged groups. You have different types of programs nationally that show trends. It could be working with prisoners, it could be working with different kinds of groups, it could be mentoring programs. But the vision that we have is connecting the city to a diverse population of disadvantage of some sort. It could be across the board. The program would look like our participants would be Afro-Americans, Asians, Caucasians, and women, not picking from one group, partnering with educational institutions to be successful to help us with the training piece, and funding participants based on salary and the program itself, the cost of the program. Paid training to allow participants to maintain a balanced lifestyle while developing skills and experience. If you're going to try to work with the disadvantaged, it's really hard to get them to volunteer when you need money to kind of balance. So the salaries would be important and the cost of the programs would be important in order to be kind of an uplift to the individual groups. Under the Equal Employment Opportunity and Equal Opportunity Commission, the city's human resources policies and procedures are applied citywide on a consistent basis as required by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And this is also proven when the police department gets the accreditation, they're always asking, and we have to show to them how certain things have been applied across the board. In 2004 to present, claims filed to the EOC were not substantiated, which means that your policies are followed on a consistent basis. The city has adopted the EOC guidelines for employment practices. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as amended, states that it is an unlawful practice, employment practice, to limit, segregate, or classify employees or applications for employment in any way that would deprive or tend to deprive any individual of employment opportunities or otherwise adversely affect his or her status as an employee because of such individual terms of race, sex, national origin, color, or religion. The other protective areas is our age discrimination. We'll start at 40 and above. We try to make sure that we're diverse in the age employment. Americans with Disability Act, anyone who qualifies for disability, we try to find some accommodations to still employ various individuals. And looking at the employee demographics, this was calculated under December 2019 at the end of the year, and it includes all of our full-time and our part-time employees. Our total employee population at that time was 1,046. Total minority males, 106. This gives it a 10.13%. And our total non-minority males, 509 at 48.47%. Our total minority females, 86, percentage is 8.22. Total non-minority females would be 345 at 32.98%. And then you put minority males and females together, 192 at 18.36%, and total non-minority males and females, 854 at 81.64%. And looking at the total number of diversity and inclusion programs and then the department community services, when you look at these numbers, they total to about, this is not participants in the plan, it is actually the total number of programs. So that totaling is 121. That's a lot of programs that the city reaches out to the community to try to help with various opportunities and just helping our community in general. If you look at Park and Recs, and we pulled out the top highest ones, you look at Park and Recs, they have 37 programs, with the youth program being from pre-K to 12, 23, and then you have adults at a program for the adults too. With all ages is 12. The police department has 27, 10 youth, 10 adult, and 7 with all ages. Fire, 18 programs, 7 youth, 7 adults, and 4 all ages. Then we collapsed all the other departments, which gave us a total number of programs of 39. Youth, 3, adults, 23, and then all ages, 13. You had in your packet a summary of all of those programs. We tried to capture everything and just give a short synopsis of those programs. And I know each department head is online here or in Zoom, that if you had any more details about each program that are not there, that they would be willing to answer. But are there any questions of me that I can clarify?
Yes, I was just appalled by the minority staff.
Okay.
Because if you look at our city, who we serve, it don't add up to the people that work here at the city. Are we intentional when we hire people? Do we go out and get them? Because I keep hearing you have minorities that apply, but they say they don't get an interview or anything, but they qualify for the position, but they don't hear anything back about it. So,
well, let's start with your first one of being appalled. And looking at the census data for the city, there were a total of about 55.9% of minority in the population. If you look at the county, it was 32 of 30.3%. And this was the last census data. And so when we compared those numbers to the city, it actually came up to be about 32%, 32.84% of that population. If you look at the overall county, it came up to be 61. So when we look at our application, we had like 39% out of 3,000. So it's also about recruiting, which we actually send all of our postings to every, we send it to the Post, which is a Black-owned paper. We send it to Spanish-speaking papers. We send it to community leaders, and we post the jobs, and now the jobs automatically go on Indeed. And so we have to get people to apply. Now, if you have 39 and you have 18% of that, when you have people apply for the jobs, they're not all going to qualify. So we're still working against that. Now, if you go look back, we had 1% from, I just remember our percentage, it hovered around 12% as an average. Then we moved to 14. So right now, from that 14, it's been increasing 1% per year. Then we have a population that we don't have a lot of turnover. Our turnover is at 8.95 right now. So when you don't have a lot of turnover, we had turnover that was high when we had some economic problems, but it went right back to not turning over. So that's why these programs are so important, because it helps us reach out to our diverse population or our disadvantaged population. And things don't just happen, they require some funding to be able to do that. But those are the things that we have to keep in mind in terms of what happens, looking at all those pieces, looking at who's applying, and then looking at what the qualifications are once they apply. So now all of our applicants hear from us because it's automatic. So no one at this point in time can say they haven't been heard from, but yes, somebody can say that, well, maybe they didn't get the job.
They get an interview, not get the job, but get an interview.
What we do try to do with our recruitment policy is to make sure that we have not just the department involved in the interview, but also recruit somebody else outside so that we can get someone who's neutral to the department. So we tried that piece of it. The other part of that is actually when our departments are interviewing, we ask them to list every single applicant. We want to see the scores for every single applicant. Those reviews are sent back to Human Resources. There are questions that are asked, and probably anybody on that hires can ask you that I will call back to say, well, now what happened to this person? Why did they not? And they will explain, or they will put it in writing that because they didn't have this or this compared to the next candidate. Not saying that it would be a minority candidate or a non-minority candidate. It would be any candidate that has to go through that process.
Are candidates identified by race on the application?
That's against the law.
Yeah, they can't do
But I
it.
was still asking.
No, it's against the law. We wouldn't do
Yeah,
anything unlawful.
yeah, you can't do that, yeah. And also we have to look at people that's retiring out, because you have people, I don't want to call it any departments, but you have people that's in some departments that knowing other people are getting ready to retire, they done been around for 12, 15 years and have an opportunity to move up. So we have to look at that as well, to be able to give a chance. Because sometimes you hear, well, this person will get the job. It shouldn't be that way. I'm saying it should be the qualified candidate that qualifies for the job that gets the job.
And that would be exactly right. So I know we're talking in generality, but we have to look at specifics in order to make sure that those things are stopped. But one of the other things that happens, each department, not every department, but the majority of departments have a career ladder. And I think the question was asked, well, how do we get people to a certain point? Not necessarily all the entries, but when you actually have your entry levels that have to go through, and even all of your current employees have to go through certain career development programs to be able to grow within the city, to be able to be there when those positions roll out.
Correct.
And so that we're working on doing that a lot, and the city manager has been instrumental in making sure that those pieces are put in place.
Do we attend like job, not now, but in the past, were we doing like job fairs?
Yeah, it's not as ongoing as I would like. Most, like the fire and police, they do a lot of the job fairs because they normally have positions to go into.
Yeah,
And it's no sense in going to a job fair if you don't have a position
yeah.
to put a person into. And so I still go back to some of these programs that we can identify, but all of those still take funding. Either the position is there, but we do have departments that have positions that will go to job fairs.
I will say that a lot of blacks don't work, or other minorities that don't work for the city. And whether it's reality or not, sometimes perception is reality to
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
And so maybe we need to find out why more and more people are not applying.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the experiences that we had, and I just have to use it all the time because it was a perfect experience. When we did the roundtable, we did have some leaders during that time, whereas the fire chief would go out to the churches and go out to different places because they brought to our attention that the department was not mirroring the community.
Correct.
And we made an effort to see what we could do. And so we had leaders send in applications, go out and talk to people. And they were able to hire 3 minority males at the time. The key is that the applicants didn't think that they would ever qualify.
Correct.
So we couldn't get them in the door.
Okay.
And by educating them to say, this is what it takes
Yeah.
to get the job. So it's going to work for both the organization and for our citizens to don't assume that you're not going to get a job.
Right.
Knock on the door. They say you knock, you get an answer.
Intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's going to work for all of us knocking on the doors. And that action was knocking on the door. So, and asking for our citizens to help us. And it was amazing to hear the young men talk about, I just didn't think I would ever be able to, because you can read something and never have any experience and then just count yourself out. So we have to make sure that everything that we have, that we put it out there in the community. People feel, and these programs have helped us develop relationships that you don't think we're this big operation that no one could ever cross the door.
Correct.
I have a question, Deborah.
Yes.
How are your interviewers chosen, and do they have to go through any implicit bias training before they are able to interview?
Now, I can't hear part of that. I couldn't hear part
I
of
said, okay. How are your interviewers chosen, and do they have to go through any implicit bias training before they are able to interview?
No, if the policy, which is online, which is still part of our recruiting policy, it tells you that they take, and within that team that's going to interview, 2 people should always review the resumes. So first, the resume is the thing that knocks on the door to get the person to come in. If I understood your question correctly, it was part of it I was still missing. So not one person decides who's going to be interviewed. There are 2 people on the team that look at the resume, because I'm not necessarily looking at all the resumes, because they go to our recruitment manager, which is in each department. They pull out their resumes and they decide. I see the tail end of it to say, okay, so how did you decide on this one versus the next one if it doesn't look right?
Yeah, I think you misunderstood my question. I was asking, how are the interviewers chosen, and if they have to go through any implicit bias training before they're in.
But then I gave you some information that you can still use. We didn't waste any time.
Thank you.
So we haven't done, the interviewers that are chosen are normally someone who knows the job. It has to be someone who is a grade higher than the person that they're actually interviewing, or be at the same grade. So it shouldn't be someone who's less than that grade, according to what the policy says.
Right.
And normally it could be the director of the department, because they're important to know who's working within their departments. It could be someone who's leaving that job, or it could be someone who's a supervisor or someone who might be outside of, some of them are trained, but we haven't done, other than just our general training that we mentioned, how not to be biased in terms of looking at resumes, but as far as the details of certifying people's interviews, that hasn't happened at this point.
Okay, is that something that we're looking to do to make sure that people don't go into interviews already kind of having their minds made up about, you know, just making sure that we are not carrying over any biases into interviews, because, you know, everybody has implicit biases. So I just wanted to know if we are doing anything to be proactive in assuring that the interviewers are proactive and not doing that during interviews.
Yeah, well, we deal with biases in terms of our training in general, but that is
Right,
not.
but I'm talking about regarding interviews though. I mean, specifically interviews, because that could be something that could be causing us not enable our numbers to be a lot closer. You know, 18%, you know, that's a big disparity when it comes to, you know, minority males and females out of a number of 1,046. So I'm just saying, I mean, you know, we have to also, you know, take people for who they are. I mean, we're all human beings, but at the same time, we have to, you know, make sure we are intentional about making sure that we are not, you know, going into interviews biased upon anything when we are interviewing, so that we can make sure that we are objectively scoring people based on their credentials and their abilities to do the jobs, and not based on their implicit biases. So I'm just saying that maybe that's something that we can look into and delve into a little deeper to make sure that that's not happening. We hope that nobody's doing that, but, you know, it could be something that's actually keeping our numbers to be as far-fetched as they are.
No, I agree. I
have a question. On applicants, when they apply and come in after the interview, and someone is chosen for the job, the other applicants, do they get this call back to say it's been filled?
They get a notice, a written notice. The system automatically lets them know. The department will say to us, we're not taking these, you can go ahead and send them out a notice. So when they're sent in, an automatic system, which is NeoGov, will send them a letter saying that another candidate has been selected.
Well, I'm not saying it don't work or does work, because I don't really know anything about that, but I'm just gonna say this, occasionally I have someone mention that to me, that we haven't heard anything.
Well, I probably would suggest this because I've heard that before, but every time I pull up a letter, it's there. So I would, if you ever get that name, would you please let us know? Because I would rather know that it's not, but every time I've heard that, we looked it up and we could find the letter.
I'll bring you one tomorrow.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank
but
you.
anything else for Ms. Reed? Thank you very much. Great job, Al.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you know, I like to thank Deborah and Brian. I'm glad that we signed on to the Brothers Keeper, and I'm glad to see, you know, what we're doing as far as diversity is concerned. But I still think as a city, we're gonna have to address racism, and it's not a comfortable thing to talk about, and I know that. And I still think it's our obligation as a city. It may even be a moral obligation. We know that all over this country and other countries, even here in Monroe, there's a social rage going on, and it was fueled by the brutal murder of George Floyd. I think that touched the consciousness of Americans, especially of women, when he said "mama," and it brought to the forefront that there is racism. Like I say, even though we don't like to talk about it, it's made a movement, and I think we need to take moments like these to address that movement and to work toward solutions or questions or answers so we can start eradicating that. And I know people that have sent emails to the city wanting to do something, want to work on committees. I get emails, I get calls of people on the street. What's the city doing? What's the city doing? And so I know it's something that we can't ignore. We can't wish it away. And it does not have to be it doesn't have to be a burden. Before we do anything else, I think we have to understand what racism is. It probably means something different to everybody, But being a black person, it means something different to us because we live it every day. And I don't believe anybody here is a racist. But if I ask the question, how many of us are anti-racist, then we might get confused because we're gonna have to talk about it sooner or later, and we're gonna have to plan for it. So the question that was asked now is what now? What do we do about racism?
Well, I'll chime in.
Okay.
I know I had sent a couple of emails to the mayor with regards to implementing a racial impact plan that I think would be beneficial to our city, to where individuals or a committee would actually come into the city and look at our policies, look at our procedures, and see how we are moving forward in that direction. We have the resources that are available. I know NLC is actually one of the resources that I'm alluding to, but there are resources out there that I think that we could benefit from. But first, we have to acknowledge that systemic racism is happening. I mean, it's happening all over the world, and we're not living in a silo or in a bubble to where it's not happening here. But it is, and it just like Councilwoman Anthony said, we definitely need to look into it. I've gotten tons of emails, tons of telephone calls, asking, what are we doing? Tons of calls about the monument, calls about just different things that's going on in the city. I think it is the responsibility as a council member to respond and to have answers. And I think if we don't really know, then I think, we have a due diligence or a duty to seek out information and to seek resources. And so the National League of Cities provides that by their racial impact plan. I think that we could actually benefit from that by taking a look at that, see if that's something that we want to do.
Well, I think first, there was an email that was sent, I can't remember now, about an apology made for an incident that happened here in the city of Monroe. Somebody was asking for the city to apologize. Do y'all remember that email that we got? I can't remember, I have to pull it up, but.
The kissing case.
Say it again.
About the kissing case.
Okay, because I guess it was some people that was involved in it.
Oh, the kissing case,
That
I remember the kissing case, that was in my lifetime. And it's where those two little boys over there, 9 and 12 years on Parker Street, were put in the male prison. That was really with the judicial system more so than with the city.
That was like 50, 60 years ago.
It was in about the late
probably
50s.
60s.
Yeah, I remember Fuzzy and whatever his other name was. But the judicial system, had more to do that because that was a judicial issue.
Let me make a comment or two. I have worked with kids coaching for 54 years. Most of the kids I coached were project kids. So there's not much. In fact, I used to go to Ashmore at 9 o'clock during football seasons, check on kids, see if there's in their units. And I was told sometimes that I was really risking. I told them they had to worry about it. I didn't, and I never did. A prime example, and recently I coached a 6th grade football. Most of the kids, in fact, the police department didn't arrest me because I had so much overload in the back of my truck that they could have, right, Brian?
Yes, sir.
But that's the only way they had to get to practice. That's the only way they had to go home. So what you generally find is 2 or 3 mothers working 2 or 3 jobs. No daddy. I was the father probably to 70% of the kids I coached. They considered me their father. So, in looking at the overall scope, it's hard. First thing you got to do is address where's the problem. And the problem being is they don't have, where there's a mom and a daddy, they do great in school. There's not an issue. Where there's only a mother, she's got 3 jobs, they're roaming the streets. And that's a fact. That's the honest truth. And now there's a lot of middle grade gangs that are jumping up. So you're seeing so many things jump up, and the thing that you got, the only thing that's going really for Monroe is the POW program. They address those kids, they take care of them, because I helped 3 years. And I mean, I'll never forget, I had one little kid, I asked him to say the blessing or prayer one afternoon. Mothers were all around, and I said, okay, son. He said, Lord, help us take this field today and kick some butt. Well, I thought that was funny, and they did too, if you don't know the truth about it. But I bring this up because that is an issue. And if you have a kid or you know somebody that is basically not being looked after, they're not going to do as well in school, and they're going to be more apt to get in trouble. You know, it's a lot of fun to take a kid up to a university and watch him meet his dream. Little PJ Lothorpe 4 years ago carried him up with his mom and Monterey to Illinois Rhine. And 3 hours later, we go sit down in a little room. They slid a piece of paper over little PJ. $50,000 full scholarship, including books. He was 5'9", 150. Little PJ looks at it and said, well, I'll think about it. And I said, no, son, sign it. He's fifth year student. He has a 3.3 grade point average. He's been voted male athlete of the year. He's been voted most valuable in the conference meet, 2 golds, 2 silvers. He made All-American at the meet in Winston-Salem State University. So kids, if they give a chance, the question is how many people you're going to get out there that's going to be able to see that they do get a chance. Now, I can't speak from all this stuff. I can only speak from kids because that's what I've worked with. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is there. I know where I can get on my coaching staff at Union Academy. I had 7 coaches, counting myself. I was the only white. I hired all my coaches. Every one of them were African American. And they did a great job. But that's the only thing I can address. And I've always thought it is the fact that there's got to be more African-American male leadership. So these kids will have something to be proud of. Angelina's husband was on our coaching staff. We had a great coaching staff. And the kids identified with our coaches. And, you know, I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better police department and fire department than we got. Deborah does a good job. I think as far as the city of Monroe goes, we're pretty darn good. We're not perfect.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one part of it. Sports and the fact that a lot of the single mothers with children, that's economics. But racism is deeper than that. It's like walking, like I could be walking down the street and walking past a car, people start locking their doors. That's racism. That's when you get on the elevator and people slide over, you know, it's all those little crazy myths and stuff that we heard over the years. And racism is something, I guess, it's part of your life experience. It's what you've been taught, what you've seen, what you learned. But we got first of all, understanding. And I've got a suggestion too. I went back and looked at all the people, you know, Emily Miles stands out because she's the principal of a school. I would like to see some of the people who reached out, some of the leaders in the community, some of the laymen in the community, maybe get on a Zoom and have a conversation about racism. That's a dialogue. It's starting somewhere. And you know, I've just recently went to a actual workshop on racism. That might sound surprising, but I wanted to have a deeper understanding. I wanted to learn that's institutional racism, that's systemic racism. And we hear those words all of the time, but unless you sit under somebody who has studied it and written about it, you won't understand it. And it's uncomfortable for me to talk about it, and it's uncomfortable to hear, but it is a fact. And this is why those people are marching in the streets, because people who have lived it and for 401 years still feel like there's no hope. And I feel, you know, all over America and here too, if we don't work toward it, if we don't go ahead and acknowledge it and move forward. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a burden. Acknowledge it, see what it is we can do and move forward. It'll never be perfect in my lifetime. I don't expect it to be, but I think it's something that's approachable, and we can at least begin the process.
Well, you got some whites, you got some African Americans that are never gonna like each other.
Of course not. You wouldn't expect that.
You know
no.
what I strive for, like for instance, our aquatic center. Our numbers match our demographics for whites, blacks, and Latinos. You know, if we get along in here, we'll make strides on certain things, but you're never going to change some people one way or the other. So my philosophy is, you know, I'm going to be nice to all of you, do the best I can, try to make the best decisions I can. I know the one thing I am good at is working with kids. So I do that a lot, and I'm still doing it. Ugly as the devil, 76 years old.
It's just
But-
like the diversity inclusion training that was offered to the council. Like, did we all take it? I'm saying that's important. That we should have took the training that Ms. Deborah
But I do know
offered to
that the
us.
city sets the tone.
Right.
And the city sets the tone that we as a city are working toward racism. That's a big start just that by itself. Because it says that we know it exists. And we want to work toward it. That, if it does nothing else, it puts everybody on notice that we're looking at it. We want to understand it. We don't know what may come from us learning more about it. Going back to what I was saying, I'd like to see us avail ourselves of the free opportunities that NLC has for us, but they also work with the staff. But I'd like to see us include some of the communities, some of those people who reached out, maybe Pat Kell, maybe Kathy Bragg, maybe Emily, you know, a diverse group of people, different age groups, get together, start talking about it. It's not blaming anybody, it's not being mad at anybody, it's really from the head and heart, try to resolve some of it.
Have an understanding of it, yeah.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
with
understand.
the street on Charles Street, there's no sidewalks. I've been on council since December, and I keep hearing about why no sidewalks. It's on Charles Street.
It's state.
So that's State Road, Charles Street.
And it costs several $1,000 a foot to lay.
I didn't know that. I didn't. I didn't have
The
a
only reason
clue.
I know is because somebody said something to me
Well, we
about it, and I called
we
Jim.
can still lay sidewalk on state land, but we have to get permission.
Yeah,
But that ain't the thing about it, it's the cost, and we do need sidewalk. I don't want to water that down at all, but to run a sidewalk on any street, I forget what it is a foot, Mr. Lloyd could tell us, but to run 100 foot of sidewalk, you'd be surprised how many, it probably cost you $1 million.
Well, I would like to see what that price is, but us to check on. We spend money for everything else, so I'm just saying.
Well,
It would be something good to look at.
Oh, yeah, well, that's one reason it's in our policy. Now, when you come into the subdivision, we have to put sidewalks in and we don't approve it. Basically, not. That's one of those reasons we get those sidewalks. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for sidewalks. I don't have any sidewalk in front of my house. Of course, I'm not gonna put any over there because I don't want,
I don't need.
I can't put any, I don't want it.
At the very least, can we maybe at the next meeting, put it on the agenda? In the meantime, maybe work with you to get some proposals together to bring to council to see what we can and cannot do.
Whatever y'all wanna do, y'all can. I'm open to anything.
It works.
You want to tell
And
me?
just for the record, being, racism is not just being nice, not just being nice to people. I mean, you have to be very intentional on your behavior and how you deal with other ethnicities. Nice is part of it, but unfortunately, it's a little bit deeper than that. So we have to also make sure that we're advocating for people that don't look like us and really support and galvanize to help everybody, because at the end of the day, it's about the human being and about human rights. And we have to see each other as brothers and sisters, and most of us don't see each other like that. And that's just been an issue for our society for a long time. And that's why the civil unrest is happening. But we have to address that. We cannot just sit here and act like it's not existing and think that everything's okay and expect for everybody just to sing Kumbaya and it's gonna go away. So we really have to make sure that we're addressing the issues and to make sure that we're going to get moving forward. I really believe that we have to get help do that. Since a lot of us aren't comfortable and really don't have the skill set to do that, but there are toolkits out there, and there are people that help us to do that. And I think that's something that we need to delve into deeper. And also, Lynn, because I grew up in Willie. My mom worked 3 jobs, and I'm a council member. So I guess I'm an anomaly when it comes to that. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, what you do as a coach. I've coached for 25 years too, but it's important that we also, you know, make sure that there's other avenues besides sports that we make sure that we pour into kids, because it's not all, sports is not the be all. You know, I was an athlete, I played sports. And so as a coach, I make sure that I teach kids life skills through whatever sport that I'm coaching to make sure that they have those skill sets so they can get out of the situation that they're in, to become better, you know, in society and to be the best people that they can be. But, you know, everybody's start is not necessarily a depiction of their finish. And I'm very blessed and I'm very happy that my mom and my extended family and my teachers and my coaches and everybody played a part in my success. But, you know, it does take a village, and I really appreciate all of that.
Thank you, Frank. If I could interject a comment, and I have to apologize. Salute, a while ago, you were speaking about, I think, the judicial system, and my audio has been spotted. Franco, I've missed part of yours, and I apologize for not hearing all of it, but it just cuts out. So I think that's part of what Bruce is trying to correct. We all know that racism isn't bound by color or ethnicity. And I think one thing we need to look at when we look at ourselves in the mirror every day is, are we practicing the golden rule? It's just as basic as that. If we want to treat others the way we want to be treated, it takes a change of heart. Judicial can't do it. Executives can't do it. We can talk about it. We need to change people's hearts, and we need to do that by being an example for them. And, you know, we've talked about systemic racism. I think we also need to look at, while we're having this, I call it a rebirth of awakening that's needed. I think we need to look at our attitude towards others, the Latino population. Discrimination against gays and lesbians, the transgenders. I think we need to open our hearts to all of these people and not hold that stigma against them. We need to look in their heart and what they do and what they try to do for others. So there's so many facets that I think we can all improve, and I know I can. And appreciate the opportunity to say a few words on that.
Okay, we need to go to item 2. We need to address our prayer.
We're gonna get through this. What was he saying?
He was just saying have a change of heart. He said when we look at systematic racism and all that, we need to look at Latinos, the transgenders, and all that. Look at the whole pool of everybody. Yeah.
Anything else on this right now? Well, if not, we'll work on that, what you were talking about.
Well,
And we'll go to
Mayor, going along with what Mrs. Anthony is discussing, and I think she was asking for some future
you told her at 4 o'clock next time.
about this, and I believe that our manager has addressed that. He did speak of something, I believe, in the month of August or September, if I'm not mistaken. And so she wanted to establish some time. Now, it doesn't have to be in this forum, you see.
Oh, no.
Because you're talking about bringing in people outside of the council. And you know how those go, committees, boards, everything else. It's sometimes hard to assemble those people and either or get them here at a certain time or things of that nature. So
I think it
I
will
support that, and I think that should be done. You know,
I understood it. She wanted something on the agenda at the next meeting, and I understood maybe 4 o'clock.
Yeah, but in the meantime, work along trying to get this conversation about racism together and include not just us, but those people who was interested, maybe leaders who work with a large group of people, and we should start the dialogue.
Okay, you have that kind of meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
If it's Zoom, you know,
I mean, you want it on council afternoon, or you just want a meeting?
a meeting.
Just a meeting.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what I
think
thought.
she, yeah, just a meeting, like a Zoom meeting or something.
Well, won't I just ask the committee of 2 or 3 to put something together and on your date or whatever,
Okay.
and we don't have to worry about next month at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Right.
Freddie Gordon, would you serve on that committee?
I would.
Okay, Ms. Anthony?
Try to help in that
That's
regard.
2. Is that enough to work on
And
that?
Leah said she'd like to
I will,
participate as
I
well.
will.
Okay,
I will.
you'd be glad to have you. Okay, that's your committee.
Not a problem.
Mayor, before you go any further on that, if you're gonna have the committee meet by Zoom, council just needs to approve an exception to your electronic meeting rules to allow the group to meet by Zoom.
That's exactly right. And I don't know how we're gonna do 25 or 30 or what do you got? But yeah.
So moved.
And so for the purposes of the clerk, the motion is to amend the electronic rules to allow this ad hoc committee to meet via Zoom.
So moved.
So Mr. McGee made the motion. Is there, Mayor, you need to ask for a second?
I second.
And then Mayor, you have to, and then you just have to have a roll call vote of that, Mayor.
Yeah, do a roll call.
Roll call vote.
Here we go. All right, all in favor, Councilman Anthony,
Yes.
Councilman Gordon,
Yes.
Councilman Holloway,
Yes.
Councilman James,
Yes.
Councilman Kazire,
Yes.
Kilgore, yes, McGee,
Yes.
okay, that will pass unanimously, if you will. I'll ask you three to take care of that, and keep in mind, any meeting you have is gonna have to be, a Zoom type meeting. I don't know if you can get enough cameras, enough qualification, might be someday down the
Well, we
road.
can do one up to 100
Yeah,
at no charge.
right.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
have.
Pete said he'll take care of that for us. Appreciate you, Pete.
Yeah, we'll appoint you. Okay, that'll be fine. You want to chair the committee?
That's fine.
Okay, we'll ask you to chair the committee. And, so you can set the dates you want to meet, y'all get together, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, that's okay. We're gonna move down to, item 2 now.
Mayor, one last thing on the ad hoc committee, just to make sure that the committee chair coordinates with the city clerk to make sure the appropriate notice goes out for the meeting day.
Okay.
No, that's not what he said.
Well, I didn't
He
understand.
said, make sure that she coordinate with the clerk to make sure notes and stuff get put out.
The notice gets that, you've got to have, because it's a public meeting, so there'll have to be a notice, the meeting notice will need to go out. So I would just ask the chair to please work with the city clerk on that.
Yes, sir. We'll take care. Thank you, sir. Good. All right, item 2, we got a few minutes left. We're gonna get this in. Item 2, legislative prayer.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
That before each council meeting, that we have a prayer from different minister on each meeting.
I second that motion.
I have a motion.
A question.
Yes.
How are you gonna determine the ministers and who's gonna make the contact?
Yep.
And things of that nature.
It's gonna be another job for somebody.
Well, hell, I don't mind being on that.
I help you out.
Me and somebody.
I help you. I help you. I help
All
you.
right, that's taken care of. All right. All right, I have a motion, I have a second. Now, any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Councilman Anthony,
Yes.
Councilman Gordon,
Yes.
Councilman Holloway, Councilman Holloway,
Yes.
Councilman James,
Yes.
Desire,
Yes.
Kilgore, yes, Councilman McGee,
Yes.
yeah, that will pass. And Mr. Desire has volunteered to take care of that, so staff won't have to do that. About 2 minutes, he'll be out of that. And Councilman James has volunteered.
I got it.
Okay, at this time, it's 5:30, about 5:28. We're gonna recess and we'll take up the rest of this in our 6 o'clock meeting at some point after. Well, this time we'll recess.
Oh, that was-